On a chilly January morning in 2025, President Donald Trump signed an executive order that sent shockwaves across the globe. This order called for the expansion of the Migrant Operations Center at Guantanamo Bay Naval Station to detain high-priority criminal aliens. Supporters laud it as a necessary step toward securing America's borders, while critics view it as a blatant attack on human rights. Trump's decision to expand Guantanamo is a symbolic act, tapping into anxieties and emotions. We must examine its historical context, legal and ethical implications, and its potential to reshape America's relationship with the world. Only then can we understand the full weight of Trump's bold move and its potential to redefine his legacy. Guantanamo Bay, a 45-square-mile enclave leased by the United States from Cuba over a century ago, has a long and complex history that has often been shrouded in secrecy and controversy. It has long been a subject of international intrigue and condemnation, drawing the attention of governments, activists, and media worldwide. For many, it is synonymous with the post-9/11 era, conjuring images of orange jumpsuits, indefinite detentions, and allegations of torture. These images have become iconic, representing a dark chapter in modern history. Established in 2002 by President George W. Bush, the detention camp was initially intended to house individuals suspected of involvement in terrorism. It was seen as a necessary measure in the fight against global terrorism. Over the years, it became a lightning rod for criticism, with many questioning its legality and morality. Human rights groups have consistently denounced the lack of due process and appalling conditions, arguing that it violates international law and human rights standards. President Barack Obama vowed to close the detention camp but faced fierce resistance from Congress. His efforts highlighted the deep political divisions surrounding Guantanamo. Trump's decision to expand Guantanamo breathed new life into a facility many hoped would be consigned to history. This move reignited debates and brought new scrutiny to the camp's future. The expansion adds complexity to its fraught history, making it a focal point for discussions on human rights, security, and governance. It raises profound questions about executive power, national security, and American values, challenging the nation's commitment to justice and human rights. As the debate over Guantanamo rages on, it is essential to remember the lessons of the past. The decisions made today will shape the future and reflect on America's moral standing. America's actions will have far-reaching consequences for its image and place in the global order. The world watches closely, and history will judge the choices made. The expansion of Guantanamo Bay is part of a broader crackdown on immigration by the Trump administration. This move has sparked significant debate and controversy, as it symbolizes a hardline stance on immigration policies. Central to this effort is the Lock-and-Riley Act, which significantly expands the government's authority to detain and deport individuals suspected of immigration violations. The act grants unprecedented powers to federal agencies, allowing them to bypass certain legal procedures that were previously in place to protect the rights of immigrants. Named after a young American woman killed by an undocumented immigrant, the act has been championed as a crucial step towards protecting American citizens. Proponents argue that it serves as a necessary measure to prevent similar tragedies and ensure the safety of the public. However, its provisions have drawn sharp criticism from civil liberties groups and immigration advocates. They argue that the act undermines fundamental human rights and targets vulnerable populations, leading to widespread fear and uncertainty within immigrant communities. One controversial aspect is its broad definition of criminal alien, including misdemeanors like shoplifting. This expansive definition means that even minor infractions can result in severe consequences, such as detention and deportation. Critics argue this could lead to the mass detention of immigrants who pose no threat to public safety. They warn that the act could overwhelm the detention system and divert resources away from addressing more serious criminal activities. The act also empowers state and local law enforcement to enforce federal immigration law, raising concerns about racial profiling and eroding trust between immigrant communities and law enforcement. This could lead to a breakdown in community relations and make it more difficult for police to effectively do their jobs. The Lock-and-Riley Act represents a significant escalation in efforts to restrict immigration, with far-reaching consequences for immigrant communities. Its impact will likely be felt for years to come, as the nation grapples with the balance between security and human rights. The scale of Trump's plan to expand Guantanamo Bay is staggering. with a capacity to house up to 30,000 detainees. This ambitious expansion aims to transform the facility into one of the largest detention centers in the world. This number dwarfs the individuals held at the height of the War on Terror, a period marked by intense global conflict and heightened security measures. The proposed capacity is equivalent to the population of a small city, underscoring the sheer magnitude of this initiative. The logistics of detaining and processing such a large number of people are daunting, involving complex coordination and significant resources. From providing adequate food and shelter to ensuring the safety and security of both detainees and staff, the challenges are immense. Medical care and legal representation are also critical components that need to be addressed. Critics argue the administration has not adequately thought through the practical implications or allocated necessary resources. They warn of potential oversights and mismanagement. Beyond logistics, there are profound moral and ethical questions about the plan. The idea of detaining tens of thousands raises significant concerns. Many of these detainees may have minor offenses or credible asylum claims, making their prolonged detention highly controversial. The decision raises concerns about potential human rights abuses, with history showing large-scale detention operations often plagued by overcrowding and inadequate care. The Trump administration has provided few details on preventing such abuses, fueling anxieties among human rights groups. The treatment of these detainees will serve as a litmus test for American values and commitment to human rights. The world will be watching closely to see how the U.S. handles this unprecedented expansion. The outcome will have lasting implications for America's global reputation and its stance on human rights. The treatment of these detainees will serve as a litmus test for American values and commitment to human rights. The international community, particularly Islamic nations, has voiced strong opposition to Trump's decision. Memories of the post-9/11 era, when Guantanamo Bay became synonymous with the detention and alleged torture of Muslim suspects, are still raw. The decision to expand the facility and detain individuals suspected of immigration violations, many likely Muslim, has reopened old wounds. Leaders from the Muslim world argue it unfairly targets their communities and reinforces negative stereotypes. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation has issued a formal statement denouncing the expansion, calling it a violation of international law. Several countries have threatened to review their cooperation with the United States on key issues, including counterterrorism and trade. The decision could further strain relations with the Islamic world, undermining efforts to build trust and cooperation. It could have far-reaching consequences for America's national security and its ability to advance its interests abroad. Trump's maneuver to expand Guantanamo Bay hasn't gone unchallenged. Legal experts and human rights organizations have swiftly mounted challenges, questioning the order's legality and adherence to human rights principles. One primary argument centers on indefinite detention, raising serious concerns about due process and the right to a fair hearing. Critics argue that using Guantanamo Bay allows the administration to circumvent established legal norms. The landmark Supreme Court case, Rasul v. Bush in 2004, established that detainees at Guantanamo Bay have the right to challenge their detention in U.S. courts. Opponents argue this precedent should afford similar protections to individuals detained under the new order. Several federal judges have issued injunctions blocking the transfer of individuals to Guantanamo Bay. These rulings signal a willingness within the judiciary to scrutinize the order's implementation. The legal battles are likely to be lengthy and complex, potentially reaching the Supreme Court. The ramifications of Trump's decision extend far beyond Guantanamo Bay. The move has sent ripples across the globe, potentially damaging America's relationships with key allies. For decades, the United States has positioned itself as a champion of human rights and the rule of law. The decision to expand Guantanamo Bay casts a long shadow over this image. European allies have expressed deep unease, viewing it as a betrayal of shared values. The move has strained diplomatic ties and fueled calls for a reassessment of Europe's relationship with the United States. The decision could have long-term consequences for America's soft power and ability to influence global opinion. Countries may be less willing to cooperate with the United States if they perceive its actions as hypocritical. Beyond the legal and geopolitical ramifications, the decision to expand Guantanamo Bay has ignited a fierce ethical debate within the United States. At the heart of this debate lies the fundamental question of America's identity and values. Supporters argue it is a necessary step to protect American citizens from dangerous criminals. Opponents view the expansion as a moral stain on the nation's conscience, a betrayal of its founding principles. The debate reflects a broader societal struggle over the meaning of justice, the limits of compassion, and the balance between security and freedom. It forces Americans to confront uncomfortable truths about their history and values. The decisions made today will have profound consequences for the nation's soul and its place in the world. The expansion of Guantanamo Bay stands as a stark symbol of the Trump administration's approach to immigration and national security. It has provoked outrage, sparked legal challenges, and strained international relations. Whether this decision will ultimately make America great again remains to be seen. What is certain is that it will have profound and lasting consequences for the country and its standing in the world. History will judge whether this was a necessary step to protect the nation or a grave misstep. The legacy of Guantanamo Bay will now be forever intertwined with this new chapter in its history.